I'll just get started.
Leader? Nope. Forward. Hi, Helen. Oscar.
Welcome everybody. I'm Monique. Women make excellent men's advocates. We're good at talking about these issues. It's a lot more comfortable. Sometimes men, it's kind of awkward talking about vulnerable men, you know what I mean? For some reason, like I've convinced so many other women about men's issues, but it just wouldn't come across the same, you know? Like I don't know what it is, but women really effective in this role, I think. In my opinion anyways. You can disagree, you're free to disagree. So yeah, I just started volunteering for CAFE about a year ago. I didn't really expect to get into it. Like I was educated to be a feminist in university, and it was pretty much like appealing to my most basic fears about all kinds of things. And I was told that MRAs are rapists. And I mean, they're all just, it's some sort of conspiracy, right?
What's the name of it?
A men's rights activist, and that's me talking. I want to differentiate. Like I'm allowed to have my opinions. CAFE, they don't want to use that term because it's politically incorrect. And I was in the CAFE conference just last September, and they had a bunch of protests from feminists, like just for talking about men's issues. Like it's very offensive, apparently.
Was that the one in Toronto?
Ottawa, actually, yeah. It was the first CAFE meeting, and I was surprised because there's lots of women there, but they were even like telling me to shut up and stuff. And I'm like, I thought you said you were advocating for women's rights, and I'm like, apparently I'm not even allowed to have an opinion. But, anyways, yeah. So, but I like for myself, I call myself an MRA because I'm really interested in the topic, and I feel really strongly about it because men are people, and everybody deserves their rights, human rights, and to be acknowledged. And I don't see anything wrong with saying, like, if we said children's rights or women's rights, like it wouldn't be controversial. So I don't understand why we all have rights, right? But I do differentiate myself. I'm allowed to have my opinion, but they don't want to use that term for CAFE, but like I'm speaking for me as far as that's concerned. So Canadian Association for Equality, I wanted to welcome you guys and also give you, like I want to have a theme, kind of like where I start up. You guys can talk about whatever you want, but I was going to talk about intimate partner violence because that affected me a couple weeks ago when I saw a guy that was really battered on the street, so that's why I thought I would talk about that theme today. So that's why that says intimate partner violence, but I'll get on. So I'll just talk about me, and CAFE. CAFE, the Canadian Association for Equality, it's about 2 years old now, and they're advocating for gender equality, and they focus on men and boys because just from all the data and statistics, it's pretty clear that that's where gender equality, the new frontier really is with men and boys. So CAFE is committed to achieving equality for all Canadians regardless of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, family status, race, ethnicity, creed, age, or disability. And I find them very, very sincere in that. I mean, the reason why it appealed to me is because I felt like it was the first time that someone actually acknowledged that I was powerful. I always felt like there was this default victim status that nobody ever talked about with feminism, and I just really liked that somebody was finally acknowledging that I have power over my environment, and that's just like way more positive to me than victim status, you know what I mean? So that's why I really enjoy CAFE. So I was a feminist at university, but I worked and traveled a lot after school. I'm pretty political as far as my personality. I have an opinion on almost everything. I work in STEM in a Calgary software company, so I work in science, technology, engineering, and math. Work with a lot of dudes, and I'm used to men. After some months' experience, I realized I don't agree with third wave feminism on the nature of gender equality. My views may not represent CAFE, so I just want to be honest about that. And that's my email at CAFE if you're interested. And I do a lot of research and thinking, and I find like interesting articles and videos, and so that's why I put the email list. If you guys want to be on my email list, I'll send you something when I find something really neat that I want to talk about. And so other faces at CAFE, we talk about the other two people that I work with on the committee are Carol. She's a great lady, and right now she's working on generating a group of supportive psychologists that can help men, like pro bono, with their there's issues that affect men. For example, a really high suicide rate with men is unacknowledged, and greater dropout rates for men and boys. Especially lately, boys are really falling behind. So there's this whole culture that's evolving post-feminism, and these millennial age guys are coming up and they're being told that they're patriarchal, and that there's like some default original sin for men. It's wrong to be a man. Masculinity is toxic. And so it's not really a surprise to me why the suicide rates are kind of skyrocketing, because it doesn't really match up with reality, you know, what these young boys are being told. And then also there's Dan. So you can ask about Dan. He's running this, he's a PhD in psychology, and I've got some pamphlets on there if you want to go to the men's circle. It's men only. He was considering having women at the, like women just like, it's CAFE, right? So it's equality, but it seems like men are different when women are around, like the whole dynamic somehow changes. So we thought it would be more helpful if it was just men only at the peer circle, and that would be more of a private setting. So that's more of the group, like the peer support side, and this would be the educational, like public awareness side would be the group meetups, right? So I was going to break into intimate partner violence or domestic abuse, like what I've kind of learned about it recently, and it's really fascinating. But I wanted to break into that topic, kind of have, if you're going to come to these CAFE meetings, like some value added, like have like a topic or some information, just not very long, we can have a discussion about whatever you want, but I just wanted to present one men's issue every meetup for the educational added value. So I want to talk about Erin Pissy. She started up the first domestic abuse shelter in the 1970s that anybody ever thought of. And what she noticed is that when people, like when she was taking in battered women, for example, that half of them were just as violent as their male counterparts. So she never saw it as a gendered issue, like men aren't bad, women aren't bad. It was just like, it was more of she noticed that it was actually very intergenerational, like one generation would teach the next, and it could be from mother to son. But the point is that it's not a gendered issue, right? So, and she realized that that there was a need to advocate for more gender neutral understanding of domestic abuse. Unfortunately, like with second wave feminism, she was resisted by feminists who hijacked her cause, and so now we have the Duluth model, like, which we all think of, that the only thing that ever happens is men beating up a wife, and that's why you see the advertisements for domestic abuse. It's just a man beating on a woman. That's all you ever think about. But really, when you look at the statistics, the greatest number of domestic abuse victims would be children, by far. And often, I think 70% of all children that are killed are by their mother. It's not by the father, right? So this is a very dishonest, it's not helpful to lie about who's being battered. And so she's still working on it. She's an old lady. She's still being resisted, and I try to spread her awareness about her because I think she's a really important lady. And she founded this whole cause, and I think she's got a lot of good understanding. She was battered by her own mother, actually, so she has a really good understanding of intergenerational abuse, right? She finally left for Canada when the feminists killed her dog. So that's really sad. I love animals. That really hurt me to hear that. Earl Silverman, I don't know if you know about him. He's a Calgary fellow. He committed suicide a few years ago, but he opened up after about 2 decades ago. Earl left an abusive marriage, so he was the one being battered by his wife. So he understood very thoroughly that it's not a gendered issue. Often with men, they're being beaten, but they can be physically stronger, but men also have a fear that if they hit back, that what are they going to do? Call the cops? And they're actually afraid of hurting the woman, I think, in some instances. So he opened up a shelter for men and their children with no government funding, and that was actually in Calgary. So he was a remarkable guy. He charged $20 a day for safe house, and his story is you can find the best MRA that I could find that did a really good YouTube video on it is Karen Strong. She's a local MRA. She's probably the best known men's advocate that I've ever seen, and she lives close to it. She lives in Edmonton, and she's fantastic, very effective, and I'm going to show you a short video with her. But they're opening up, she's opening, like her and her like she's part of the Honey Badgers, but that's a men's advocate, and it's a bunch of women just like me, and they've got a new room in there. They call it after Earl Silverman, but I don't think he killed himself because he was depressed. I think it was actually a political move to try to expose, because he was turned down. Like, he went to the Human Rights Commission, which I think is a total joke in Canada, and he tried all these things, and you know, it just door slammed in his face one after the other, and trying to get help for these men. And he talked to some feminine, some of these, very you know, all through the government and everything, and they said they would take, you know, the story of one woman over all the statistics they could ever find. So it's just very difficult for him, and I think that was what he did. He was trying to make a platform with his death. Yeah, so I don't like that. This is my video, I think.
Same with domestic violence. A feminist analysis of the 70s
Naomi
was
Wolf.
that if a culture
We're gonna see Karen
gives
Strong.
men,
Strong
or I would say any group, but in this case, the example is men as a whole,
She's a feminist.
the entitlement socially or culturally, not just through the law, to beat up women, and the culture says, well, that's your lot, or be a good wife, or put up with it, or be silent, that's a form of taking away rights, or injustice, that is just as serious as if the state takes away your rights. I do think that's an important insight. I would add to you that a woman can beat up a man, a woman can beat up a child. You know, there's no gendering of injustice or cruelty.
There is, though.
That's Karen.
Well, okay, do you mind if I just
Go ahead.
finish this and then...
Hey, riot time! Karen, it looked like you wanted to jump in there.
I did. You know, like, honestly, in 1904, Theodore Roosevelt started a campaign to bring back the whipping post. And he wanted to bring it back as a punishment exclusively for men who beat their wives. And the reason he wanted to use the whipping post to punish men who beat their wives was because if a man was jailed for wife battering, his wife might suffer hunger or want. And if he was fined for wife battering, she might suffer hunger or want. Okay? But if he got 30 lashes at the public post, he could still go to work the next day, and he could still support her. Right? Now, we have this idea that before feminism came along in the 60s and 70s, that domestic violence against women was completely socially acceptable. Now, I don't understand how one can come to that conclusion when the President of the United States wanted to bring back corporal punishment, which had been banned, right, in most states at that time, exclusively to punish men who batter their wives. And especially since the treatment